It's March, which means it's the Irish Readathon, which means I get to whack out my best Irish accent for this video just for the crack. Hi everyone, it's Jenny. Welcome back to my channel, and if you are relatively new you might be a bit confused, but just to explain, I am originally from Ireland and I moved when I was 7 to England and I sadly lost my accent, so I just like to do an Irish accent because it's fun for this video only, don't worry. And I'm really excited because it's the Irish Readathon and I love this. It happens all throughout March. It's hosted by Leanne, Aoife and Elaine. I will link them all down below with their announcement videos and TBRs and whatnot. And they just encourage you to read more Irish literature than you would normally. I'm going to read mainly just Irish literature. Like any good readathon, they have prompts. So the first one is to read a book with green on the cover. Now, I did not think this through, being an idiot. So this is Loving by Henry Green. I mean, listen, green is in, I feel like that should count alone. But there is a peacock on the front of this. You're just going to have to believe me because I cannot be bothered to take this off and film it and put it back on. So it's a book that isn't by an Irish author, but it's set in Ireland in a manor house in the Second World War. That's all I know. I've had it for like 3 years now. It's about time I read it. And it's, it's short. What more did you want? Then there is a prompt to read a non-fiction book. So I have A Short History of Ireland. And I cannot remember the author's name, but it'll be here. And I'm excited because quite often when a book has the word short in the title, it isn't actually a short history at all, but this is only 10 hours, so that'll be grand. And then I also have, obviously at the bottom of the pile of books, because I'm not organised enough for this, I have Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt, which is a memoir, I believe, about his parents who moved back from New York to Ireland and how there was a mistake. And I think there's a lot of poverty and a harsh upbringing. But it's a book that I've heard the title of a lot, but actually haven't read. And I'm buddy reading this with Dina from Hella Going, who is a very new booktuber, and she's wonderful. I highly recommend, check her out. I'll link her down below. She has a very similar taste in books to me. So if you like, well, yeah, she does. She has a similar taste to me. So if you like me, you should like her too. And this will just be a nice kind of modern classic to tick off. A prompt that I'm really excited about is to read a new to you author. So I've got a couple. I've got, surprisingly, Marion Keyes, who is such a publicly loved and successful author. I'm going to listen to Grown Ups by her. She's written so many books and she's really popular, so I'm excited because she narrates it herself, and I just love Irish audiobooks. They're my favourite to listen to, hands down, and I've listened to her in a podcast and I just thought she was delightful. And this is about a family who on the surface look like they're doing really well, but actually cracks are beginning to show, and then secrets come out about their problems that they've all been hiding. And I just love stories about family and the realisation that you have to change and, in this case, grow up, and that idea and the difficulty of that, and how even when you're an adult you cannot feel like a grown-up. I relate to that. Don't we all right now? So that's exciting. I also want to listen to a few audiobooks by Jess Kidd, but especially Things in Jars, which is about a woman detective, which is very exciting, and how she has to solve a mystery of a girl that's been kidnapped, but she has these kind of strange, like motley crew, people that are helping her, like a 7-foot maid, that kind of thing. So this also ties into another prompt, which is about having a mythical or folklore element to it. Really excited for this, her great things. And another book that I kind of think fits into that is The Woman Who Gave Birth to Rabbits by Emma Donoghue, who I've read a previous short story collection from before and a novel, and this is a short story collection that isn't all set in Ireland, but it's set around the British Isles. So some stories are in Ireland and it's just her writing stories about strange things that have happened in history throughout the British Isles. And the titular story is one about a woman in, I think, the 18th century in England who made people believe she was giving birth to rabbits, and it just sounds wacky and wonderful. And there was a prompt to read a book by an author of colour or an or an LGBTQ plus author. So I am going to read The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. This is such a beloved book on Booktube, and I, like quite a few of my audiobooks, have been saving this for March, and it's long, but I am along for the ride for sure. I think it's like a coming of age tale, but I'm really not sure. It's a book that I kind of don't want to know much about. I just want to go in and experience it. I've only read 2 of his books before, and it's been a while since I've read one, so I'm very excited because he's got quite a big body of work, but this seems to be the most universally loved, at least that I've heard about. There is a group read, but I won't be joining in with it. It sounds great, it's called The Hen of Wars, but it's very sadly, my library don't have a copy, and I'm not going to let myself buy any more books until my birthday, because I bought so many in January, and I hated the audiobook, and I don't want to just read it for the sake of it if I'm not actually going to enjoy it in that format. So it's a book that's on my radar now. It sounds great, I'm just not going to read it with everyone else this month, sadly. But that's okay. And then I have a few extra books, of course, it's me. So I have a play. I have this collection of Brian Friel plays, and I want to read Faith Healer, which is a very short play. It's only about 30 pages or 35 pages. And it's just a series of 3 monologues. There we go, it's only that long, see? And it is about a man who travels around Ireland and Wales trying to heal people and do miracles, and I saw it through a Zoom performance, because it's just monologues, so it's the kind of show you could put on, and I enjoyed it, but I thought this would be a good one to read because it's just monologues, so I'm excited for that because I love him. He's one of my favourite playwrights. I have a couple of poetry collections, so I've got Death of a Naturalist by Seamus Heaney, which is his first ever collection that was published way back in 1966, and then I have a book that, oh my goodness, my friend gave me for last year, and I didn't read it in the last readathon, so this year I'm going to read it. I've got to, because I've been holding on to it for so long. But this is Seamus Heaney 100 Poems, which is a collection of poems for his work throughout his whole career that he's selected, and I know this was published just after his death, so this will be a really lovely way to sort of see the breadth of his poetry and how he developed, and also what poems he thought were good or valuable or interesting enough to pick out of all of the ones that he wrote. I can't wait for this. Then the last year or two I've been reading one of the Flann O'Brien novels, so I'm on to The Hard Life, which is the 4th one in this collection out of 5. It's short, it's only really a novella, just over 100 pages. Don't know much about it, but it's probably some kind of parody on Irish stereotypes in terms of how English people or outsiders think Irish people live, and he's always fun to read. And then I've got a short story collection, which I'm excited to it's kind of half a reread, half new to me, because it's 2 short story collections I think that sort of correspond. It's Keynotes and Discord by George Edgerton, who was actually a woman in late Victorian. I think this was published right at the end of the century, something like 1899, don't quote me on that. And I studied and read Keynotes for my master's, but not Discourse, so I'm going to just read all of it. I've read the first story already that I wrote an essay on way back when, so I'm excited for this because she is fascinating. She writes in a really modern way, even though it's Victorian, and she's a really lesser known classic Victorian Irish author, so that's going to be great. And last but not least, sorry, my mouth's getting so dry. Right, we've got Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, because I started this a long time ago. I got about 35 pages and I couldn't hack it. And it wasn't bad. I just wasn't in the right emotional space, because it's about Shakespeare, and well, really not about him, it's about his wife Agnes, and when her children are sick, especially Hamlet, and how she's dealing with that, and it's a lot about grief, and I just wasn't in the right headspace for that. But I really want to read it because I bought it in March last year, so I'd like to read it within a year, and also the Women's Prize is coming up this year, and I just would like to have read the winner from last year, for when the long list is announced for this year's, because it's just nice to not let these linger on your shelf too long, because I know that I'm just, wow, that was really coherent. I'm just terrible for buying award-winning books or shortlisted books and then not reading them, so I don't want this to be one of those, because I've heard so many wonderful things about it. So there we go. And then there are more Irish audiobooks, but I'm not going to go on about them too much because I'm sure that's enough to be going on with, but I will quickly say I wasn't going to, but I did decide in the end to pick out 3 books from my TBR jar. So these are low priority, absolutely no pressure. I didn't read one from my jar last month and that's fine. So I just picked out Passing by Nella Larson. This I would like to read because there's another readathon going on. I feel like March is really busy for readathons, and there's one being hosted called March of the Moderns by Margaret Pinard. I will also link her down below, and she's focusing on literature that was published anywhere in the world between 1901 and 1945, which is a really interesting period of literature. So I'd like to read this, and it's super short, and it's just about a woman who's black passing as white, as far as I know, which apparently inspires The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which is getting a lot of hype right now. I got the non-fiction book Poverty Safari, Understanding the Anger of Britain's Underclass by Darren McGarvey, which is kind of what it says on the tin. And then I got Love in Colour, Mythical Tales from Around the World Retold by Bala Babalola, and again, kind of what it says on the tin. There's a list in the back of the original fairy tales that she's riffing off of, but I just think it sounds great because it's diversifying these old stories and modernising them as well. So some great reading is going to be done. I am so excited to get my teeth stuck into all this Irish literature. It's just such a joy every year, and I would love to know if you're joining in, or if there are any books that you really want to read this month, or if you're joining in with any other readathons. Let me know. That I'm sure there's lots I don't even know about. But anyway, I will sign off and reluctantly relinquish my accent, and I will see you soon. More Bookish Shenanigans. Bye!